please. Councillor Aaron, do I have a seconder? Councillor Ash, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
First item carried. First item of our agenda for decision, 4.1, pages 13 to 18, our work programme. Welcome, Jess.
Welcome. So we're just noting our work programme and the attachment for you. I did wish to give you a verbal update on the annual report and where we're at with that. And otherwise you can just ask questions. So the annual report is getting to the pointy end of the audit, and this is in relation to our 30 June 2024 year. Where we're at is we're basically down to some valuation of our assets issues, and there's possibly an issue around our stock banks that we are liaising with the auditors and valuers on. So just to summarise that, we've had an asset manager that's done a very good job in our asset reporting of infrastructure assets, and a lot of work has been done to actually get the data on the stock banks that we have. So it's a little bit of a situation where we've had the stock banks in, but we've never had the kilometres. We now have the kilometres and they're able to value it properly. This is going to give us about an $80 million increase in assets at this point in time. So it's obviously material, and it indicates that potentially we didn't have that right in previous years. But we're working through it still with the auditors and looking into the valuation methods. And that's pretty much, I think, the biggest piece coming. Otherwise, the progress on the audit and the annual report is going pretty well. And most things are fine. It's just those big asset items that are being worked through now.
Thank you for that. So we're on schedule.
We are on schedule, yes, we're on schedule to adopt. So this last month will be the hardest part, where we are working through those big numbers, the assets. That's the biggest, highest importance to everybody. And that's why this last piece will still be hard, but we are on track.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Any questions on the annual report, and we'll come back to the work programme. Councillor Aaron, thank you.
Thank you. Just that stock bank 18. Are you able to just, in a nutshell, explain what the impact that has?
It's something we're not sure yet, because we still have to talk to the valuers and really understand. But basically, it's like it's almost like we had in our assets list stock banks, but they weren't identified. It's almost like a situation, say, where you've had a road and you've got it valued based on the fact there's plastic pipes this big in the road, but later on you dig up the road and you realise actually there's concrete pipes and they're this big. And so when you give that data to the valuers, they can actually value it more accurately. So it's a potential. We have to work it through still and really understand what was already in our asset schedules, but it's just a case of we've done a lot of flood resilience work. We've looked at our flood and we've measured them properly, and we've got the kilometres and what they're made out of. So it may not be a situation that we never had them recorded. We just never really had the data. So the auditors will 100% talk properly about this, as will we, but we're in the middle of just figuring out the last little details of how it all came to be, and it could be, yeah.
So watch this space.
Watch this space. It'll be the biggest talking points of the annual report. Okay. Yeah, from an audit perspective, yes. Okay.
Yeah, because the question I have is, are they talking about a prior period adjustment?
They're not sure.
They're not sure?
They're not,
oh my.
They don't think we may need to, but even if we do need to, it may not be a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but they're not sure if they're going to do that yet.
So it's being counter language, right? Do people understand what a prior period adjustment actually requires? Do you want me to explain, or do you?
Please.
Okay, so a prior period adjustment, you've actually got to go back and adjust last year's comparatives in the financial statements. And and if they do that, then there will be a note in the audit opinion, if it's material,
yes,
right, that it's saying is the financial statements are now correct, but they will draw the reader's attention to it. It's called an emphasis of matter.
So can I, through the chair, just one point on that is, one of the, there's no real depreciation on stop banks. So it's not, because of the fact that it won't make a material change to prior years, it's because of that, we might not do that, but the auditors will work it through once they've got the full facts. And it requires talking to the valuers as well. Yeah.
The question is $80 million material to the value of your total plant, property and equipment? And my understanding from discussions with other auditors, normally materiality is normally anything from 5 to 10 is not sure. Anything over 10% is definitely material. Anything less than 5% is not material. However, the guidance from Office of the Auditor General says that for plant, property and equipment, i.e. your infrastructure, 5% is automatically material.
Okay.
So that's a bit of a moving feast.
Next one.
And the other thing that I think too is that when you, and these are, it used to happen a lot in local government, when we actually moved back in the 1990s, early 2000s, when we were finding all these assets that we didn't traditionally record, you would have to record the additional value of the what is known as found assets as income.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, okay. So your income and your surplus goes through the roof, but it's basically a non-event because there's no cash associated, there's no expense, but that's the correct accounting treatment. So it does require some significant explanation in the financial statements.
That's right. And through the chair, they actually we're trying to determine whether it is a found asset or just a data quality issue, and it can actually impact how that falls.
Yeah. So it's really quite complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I mean, fantastic that we have
them recorded
data.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Councillor, on the annual report question?
Just on the last task, actual potential litigation matters. And that's getting a worry. We need to monitor how much litigation we have done vis-a-vis last few years. And if you're spending too much there, what is causing it? And also, I mean, we have a case now with, I don't know how much it's gonna spend on. We already spent 160,000 on that.
Through the chair.
Yeah.
We will have a report this meeting, and we do every meeting about all of our open and potential litigation matters.
Yeah.
Usually they are covered by insurance, and we do explain the dollar impact on those once they're closed off as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. The last question on the annual report, last year, correct me if I'm wrong, the valuer recommended we actually revalue and appreciate our base course, which is, no, sub-base. Now, my understanding is sub-base you don't actually replace, and therefore why you depreciate it. Has that actually been resolved? Because that was a recommendation.
It's not resolved, but I could make that resolved this year if you'd like.
Yeah.
I think it's very immaterial to us, like it's less than $100,000 of depreciation, and I think it's spread over 100 years. So
my personal view is, and speaking to other valuers, that whoever's doing your revaluation is requesting that is the only one doing it.
Okay.
And my suggestion is, because you're not planning on replacing it, you shouldn't depreciate it, therefore you don't need to revalue it.
Okay.
It's like formation. When you build a road, you put it in, it's there forever, unless there's exceptional circumstances, you would actually replace it.
Thank you.
Makes life easy for everybody. Okay, that's the annual report. Is there anything on the work program that people have got members have got a question on, or anything you'd want to highlight, Jessie, on that?
Not particularly from me.
Okay. The only question I have, and I think you and I talked about it, is the risk management framework. And I think that's probably something we'll I would like to see a discussion on in the formal November meeting, because at the moment it doesn't have a dot, but I'll talk to Sue and Jessie, and maybe we can bring the work program, because I also see that it's on our policy update, the policy is also being worked on as well. So I think those two need to come together. And we've got, again, later in the public excluded, we've got our updated on our risk work as well. So I think we need a bit of a meeting of everybody's minds, including staff and elected members on that, about bringing that forward. All right, so no further debate on that.
One question.
Sure.
Hey, for you, Chair. I'm assuming that the October column is only there showing the flow of the annual report.
Correct.
Using again in October.
No, and there's a special, there's actually on the resolution that we are agreeing to having an extraordinary meeting on the 3rd of October, and that will be online.
Oh. No, sorry, that's the wrong. I'm in the minutes.
The 3rd of October, we'll be meeting online.
Cool.
That's the plan. Otherwise, the original idea was we were actually going to move the meeting to October, and that would upset a number of you. We did talk about it actually moving that meeting. We thought it would be better for a reporting perspective to have this normal meeting in September, then meet just online just to do the annual report, and then meet in November. Otherwise, you'll be meeting in October, and then again a month later at the end of, well, actually not quite, but at the end of November. So it's better from a work perspective to have that special meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So on that basis, we've got two recommendations. One is that we note the work program for September, and we agree to an extraordinary meeting on the 3rd of October to be held online. There's two recommendations there. Back on page 13, do I have a mover for those two recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Ash. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Erin. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye, those against carried. Our next item is 4.2, our quarterly report update. Thanks, Marnie. Pages 19 to 26. We'll take your report as read. Is there any further key information you want to bring to the committee's attention?
Good morning. So we're at the first report of the rating year. So all of the overdue from last year has fallen into this report for rates. So we are kind of, it's a bit reduced from last year. So I think that's really positive considering year on year we have rates increases. Then we are managing that very well. We have sent off mortgage demand letters to all the banks for people who owe rates that have mortgages. That's really all from a rates perspective. We've got a few postponed accounts now, so we've got $35,000 of rates on postponement, so they're paying their current rates, and their arrears are postponed, and we've got another couple of accounts that we're working through that postponements on them as well. We do have $61,000 worth of land rate arrears for sovereign citizens, so people refusing to pay their rate. Some have mortgages and some don't, so that is creeping up. We are seeing some mortgagee sales come through and people generally struggling. So we just are managing that the best that we can. The water rates arrears, you'll note that July arrears have gone, July billing's gone down, and that's because we couldn't bill July until August, so that's why that has decreased. Usually it would go up dramatically in July because we charged the first cubic metre, but that's not the case this year because of the delay in the LTP. And everything seems to be going okay with debtors and sundry debtors. We're just managing that and trying to get people to pay as quickly as possible because, you know, people's financial situations are very fragile at the moment. So if we don't get that money in quickly, then we might not get it in at all. So we are working quite hard on prioritising, chasing that debt and getting that debt in. So that's, yeah, in a nutshell.
Okay, any questions? Erin, thank you.
Thank you. I suppose my question is around that delayed striking of rates. Has that caused any, like, are people understanding what's happened? Are you noticing any feedback from the ratepayers there when they're trying to work out payment plans and stuff? Has that been smooth enough, do you think? Or
Yeah, I think
comfort?
we worked really hard to make that as smooth as possible, and we did a really big comms plan so that people were prepared. Before we set the rates, we had a lot of work, of a huge amount of work there to do. So people understood that, and, you know, everything's on track. People are paying. Obviously, the first instalment's not due until the 20th. That's all in the current rate, so that's not for arrears. So, yeah, I think it has gone really well. I think that we'll start noticing more hardship when people then have another instalment due quite quickly after.
Right.
So we plan on seeing people not being able to afford that second instalment. But we're unsure on what will happen. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Ash, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions, page 20, PDF is what I'm referring to. We talked about the abandoned land, 12, many years, and haven't seen any progress or sale yet. Can I go one by one, or can I just tell them all in one?
Oh, I can answer that question now. So, I mean, we've had resource taken from our team, so we just have to prioritise that, and at this stage we haven't been able to.
Okay. So you have 1.3 million debt, which is kind of core debt with no contacts. Have you tried something to get some contacts? I wonder how come we don't have any contacts of the ratepayers.
So with multi-land, it's very different from general land. There might be, for example, 100 owners, and a lot of those owners may have died, and so you're trying to deal with their families who might be large, and you're also, you know, it's a big ask to expect people to come forward and claim a $70,000 debt. You know, they're not going to take that responsibility. It's very complicated, the more people that are involved. So, and we do our best, but resource in this space, you know, is also going into all of the current inquiry at this point in regards to rates increases, and assisting, because we've lost a staff member, so assisting with our general, you know, solicitors' requests and things like that. So we have to be flexible in how we're managing that.
The last one is, we haven't talked about payment arrangement. We have debt collectible 28 from 27 cases and sundry debtors and whatnot. And you're engaging debt collectors. I'm just thinking, is it really worthwhile collecting 27,000 from 28 cases through debt collection? And are we getting any bang for our buck?
Whereabouts is this, sorry?
This is on page 25, I think.
So that's for sundry debtors. I mean, yeah, so when it comes to debt collection, your options are very limited, because you either write the debt off, you put it, for sundry debt, you can put it with a collection agency and they will get a default against their name. That does make some people pay. But other than that, generally legal action cost outweighs the amount of the debt. So your only option is to put it with debt collection. You only pay on it if the funds get paid, and then you'd write it off after, you know, your 6 years is up. But that's your only option, because otherwise you'd spend a lot more in collecting it and legal fees than what it's worth.
The payment arrangement is not an option. You can give them some kind of leeway they can pay over years or something.
So, I mean, there's lots of different reasons why people don't pay. They might not have money, they might not want to pay, so it's not as straightforward as just people paying.
Thank you.
And like in the news recently, they were dead.
Yeah, and that's not unusual either, that's quite common,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions? I just wonder, and maybe we'll have another offline discussion. I know a couple of councils that in terms of building consents and resource consents, if there is a debt outstanding, the council has a terms of trade to say is if you've got a debt outstanding, you can't lodge a new consent until the old one is paid. So some people, apply for a consent, right? They pay their deposit, but the consent costs a lot more to process because of time, and then they don't uplift the consent, but they don't pay as well. So there's a debt outstanding. Legally, it's because we've processed the consent, there's an amount due. What some councils have done, and maybe it's worth investigating, it's got to be in your terms of trade, is if your terms of trade says you can't lodge a new consent until any outstanding amount on previous consents has been paid. So therefore, while you've potentially lost money on one consent, you don't get them then lodging new consents.
Mhm.
And I just wonder whether that's something worth
Yeah,
talking to your consent people. And it's not a big job, but maybe we should, particularly with it, might be something worth pursuing.
And it is a normal process. Any business that has
Correct.
money outstanding doesn't allow them to do further business with them.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not a normal business, so
No.
we've got to have it specifically as a terms of trade to actually enforce that.
Yes.
Right? You,
Just think it's not unreasonable.
it's not, absolutely, it's not unreasonable. Yep. But the other question I have, if we can go back to abandoned land, right? It would be useful, look, abandoned land, I know is hugely resource hungry in terms of time, right? And you say your next steps are proceed with abandoned land sales, which again, chews up a huge amount of resource. It would be useful maybe if we could have what is an estimate, the rateable value of the land versus what the outstanding total rates. Because that then we're giving priority to the abandoned land that's getting up to the maximum value of our rates. Because once if you sell a piece of land, abandoned land, then you generally, if the rates exceed the sale proceeds, you've got to write the rates off because no one will actually buy it if there's rates outstanding. So I just wondered whether that might actually help you as a priority.
yeah.
Bearing in mind that rateable value doesn't always equal market value.
No. And there's a lot of blocks in that land. They're just slithers that, they've
Yeah,
been forgotten to get sold
yeah,
in the main property, and it's, it's going to be hard to on-sell them. Yeah, and one of them is a piece of abandoned land that's been abandoned again, bought and abandoned, so.
yeah. So I think, if we could just get I think that might help prioritise
Okay.
where you want to spend your efforts, but where we've got, because the last thing you want to do is have some abandoned land that you haven't taken any action against, that it does have some value for greater than 6 years.
Yep.
But as you say, if it keeps on getting abandoned,
Yeah, so just also to be clear, we are not stat barring that debt for abandoned land. We've sealed orders, but we have not stat barred that debt, so that is accruing.
cool.
It's not being written off, so that's also why it's growing.
I think the other issue too for me is because you're adding penalties on penalties.
Yes.
It's what is the value of the rates that are outstanding. So you've got the information be useful in terms of rate value, rates, and then the cumulative penalties. Because obviously you can quickly treble or more than that your penalties if no one's paying the rates as well. True loss to council.
Yeah.
Would be useful and then help prioritise.
Yep.
Any further discussion on the quarterly debtors report? You're happy to move the recommendation, are you, Councillor Ron? Are you happy to move the recommendation? Okay. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ash, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. It's carried. Thank you very much, Lani, for your work. Our next item is our Treasury report. Thank you, Julia. Page 27 to 32. We'll take your report as read. The key highlights you want to bring to the committee's attention?
I just wanted to highlight really the interest rate risk position, the fact that in the last report in April, we had hoped that we would be executing more in interest rate swaps. That didn't actually happen until June. And as a result of that, we're now adhering and complying with Treasury policy. Subsequent to June, to the date of this report, the swap rates in the market fell significantly around about mid-July. The report states it was mid-July 2025. That is an error. If you could read that as mid-July 2024. The decline was due to market expectations with recent announcements from the US Treasury scene, and that the market was expecting the Reserve Bank to reduce the OCR. On the back of that decline in the interest rate swap rates, PwC recommended that we should potentially enter into some additional interest rate swaps, which we did. And the market was right, because the Reserve Bank did indeed reduce OCR rate by 25 basis points in mid-August. So with us having purchased those additional $10 million worth of interest rate swaps, we've increased our medium-term hedging position. Basically means that we're offsetting interest that we're paying on loans against interest that we're going to be getting back in the short term. And otherwise, yes, it's, you know, as reported in the Treasury report. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. So my major worry in this thing is we have a current debt of about 54 million. It might come down to 44 because we have 10 million paid off. And roughly around more than between 7, we are looking at about $3 million of debt servicing on a yearly basis, funded by ratepayers, which is about 7% of the rates. Are we looking at any, and I will ask the chair as well to give their thoughtfulness in this, to look at reducing this debt level, because whatever we collect is not good enough.
We need the debt in order to complete the work programme, because we don't collect enough in rates every year to be able to complete the capital works that is being presented to council. So there is an element of debt that we do require, and this is why we leverage the interest rate swaps, so that we're trying to reduce the cost of that debt. Because certainly at the moment, the way that the market is, we're receiving money back from the banks for those swaps.
My core questions, Chair, if you understand, is more to do with the debt servicing. Yep. Ratepayers constantly burn 7%, except on one item. What are we doing about it? I know you're trying to reduce it by swaps, which works sometimes, doesn't work some other time. It is the market, right? But are we, as a concept, looking at something tenable on that?
Can I, right? I'm going to fire this question right back at you, right? Because the amount of debt is actually a council decision, right?
Which we've made.
You've made, right? And I think Julie is quite right that the issue is that it's a balancing act between having debt and doing capital works or using rates to do capital works. So that's a political decision, right? My only observation is either at 54 or 44 million dollars, and the if you look on page 28 of the agenda, you see the ratios as of 30th of April. I assume that's the right date, is it?
June.
Should be 30th of June.
The June, my apologies.
That was your other deliberate mistake. So see if we'd read the report correct.
Yes, you passed. Well done.
The issue is they are exceedingly low, right, compared with a lot of other growth councils. I'm aware of a number of councils that you see the LGFA covenant rates there, they're pushing up against those limits.
Auckland's one of them, isn't it?
Pardon?
Auckland's one of them.
Auckland, I'll rattle them off for you. Auckland, Tauranga, Hamilton and Hastings
Wow.
are all the ones that I know of that are all at their almost at their maximum debt. Now, Hastings is a little bit abnormal because they had the Havelock North water issue. So they built a new lovely water treatment plant. And then all of a sudden they had a little bit of a cyclone and they've had to do a deal with the government that they were buying all these properties and the council were contributing to buying all these property for which was actually unbudgeted and they've had to borrow additional money for. So I think, look, I hear the cost for the ratepayer, but it's a political decision. How much capital works do you want to do and how much debt do you want to have and versus what's your rate increase? And it's a balancing act.
It's like a business. Like sometimes it's a wise decision, particularly if the interest rates are beneficial.
Yeah.
Borrow the money and get the work done before the inflation takes over and drives the price of what you're trying to do way higher than the money, the interest that you pay.
And can I also say, as with the growth, like money buy always astounds me how much it's continuing to grow, right? So you actually need, sorry?
Just you wait.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, but to me, the council needs to put that infrastructure before the people arrive, so it's there, and you actually recover it through contributions. So to me, it's a real balancing act. And what I would be really keen, right? Now you've just adopted your long-term plan, right, or your 3-year plan. How are we managing not just the current debt, but what's the plan for the next 3 years, because it's long-term debt, and what's our overall strategy? Because the risk is that we either overswap or underswap, right? And I think that to me is that we are too aggressive with saying, well, we're going to do all this capital works, therefore we're going to have all this borrowing, therefore we're going to have all these swaps, and then we don't do all the capital works for a variety of reasons. And to me, that's where I would want to see
Yes,
future reporting
that is
committee.
the next project on my list once we've
Excellent.
completed
Oh,
My
annual report.
core question remains. So we are comparing the debt level of other councils to this council, right? Just we are being counters. It's not like that. They have a stronger rate base. If you're talking about Auckland, there are 1 million people contributing. We are a smaller rate base, right? So we haven't done even 1 cent of repayment in 7 years since the 44 million. And how on earth we are going to repay another 3 years LTP based on the rating base we have? So it's not about the amount of debt we can go up to 100 million or 500. 3 waters are not there, right? If they take the debt, that's another story. Like you are a chartered accountant chair and you know more about it. If it was your money and you're sitting on a 7%, 44 or 54 million debt, how are you going to repay? It is the primary concern.
and that to me should be reflected. It's not a job for this committee to debate it. It's a debate that needs to be happened as part of your long-term plan, collectively agreed, as part of your financial strategy. And the challenges, and I will close this discussion off because we'll argue about it all day and we can't do anything as this committee. It's a balancing act, right? And it's council's view on how much debt it believes is prudent. Bearing in mind, I hear you saying is we actually haven't repaid debt. Well, Julia will probably hopefully agree with me. You have actually repaid some debt, but because you've done new capital works, you've actually taken out new capital works, right? So you've repaid some debt, but you've also then, because you've done new works, you've actually taken on more debt.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Pettit, have you got a comment? Your hand is up. Thank you.
Yeah, so the first question that I had was the swaps are going to mature next month. What is the advice from PwC on whether to further entertain those swaps, or what's the advice moving forward after it comes due next month?
They're just going to fall due, and we're going to let them lie because of the recent swap executions that we've done. We've covered ourselves to remain compliant and adhere with Treasury policy.
And the second question that I have is, so have you done any calculations versus the two $5 million loans that were taken back in 11 March? So the interest rates on those final figures in the external debt and maturity profile versus what the swaps are going to bring us in. What's the, are we in the money or out of the money?
Well, what the swaps do is they mitigate the interest rate position. So they're never going to entirely cover the whole cost of taking out that debt, but they reduce the amount that we pay. So we're trying to do our best by ratepayers, reducing the bottom line basically as with what we're paying out on that debt. Sorry. No?
Well, I just see, because the swap rate, but you haven't put in what the OCR, the OCR implications, but the interest rate on the swaps is sitting at 6% versus just even looking at the bottom lines, 6% and 6.69% and 6.1%. So I'm just wondering, because the interest even on that term deposit is lower, then yeah, I probably have the similar comments to Councillor Nair on that. That's on the face of it, because you haven't given us any further information around the other the OCR and yeah.
If I can refer you to the piece on hedging instruments in my narrative there, I do mention the official cash rate, the OCR. It had remained at 5.5% for, I think, the last 3-4 years. It was reduced to 5.25% in July. So at the time of this report, the OCR was 5.5%. So the difference between the OCR and those interest rates that you're seeing in the maturity profile, the interest rate swaps give us that amount back.
Through the chair, I'd just like to comment. Yeah, so we can actually analyse that and we could start reporting that to you, what we benefit and the cost of both options, i.e. if we did not take out swaps, what our cost would be. But
yes,
also
please. That would be really helpful, because I think I'm assuming that we're better off, but it's very obviously complicated and complex.
It's complex, but we also, Councillor Paniora, we have to do some, regardless if it's beneficial, because it's hedging and it's a low risk position that we take. When we estimate our hedging we have to, our policy requires us to do it based on our LTP estimated debt levels. As we know, it's actually a lot less. So we are managing that very closely with PwC. Well, we don't want to do hedging as much as we're supposed to based on our debt that we think it will be in the LTP, because we think it might be lower, as you all do think that too. So we just manage that difference quite closely, but we can report to you on those figures, and we will, but just noting that sometimes it is what it is because we still have to do it.
Yep.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments, questions? I mean, my only concluding comment is Treasury is a complicated business. I did it for a number of years, right? I was Jesse for, I don't know, or Sue, depending on your point of view, right? And Julia all rolled into one. I used to do it myself, right? And I used to sweat over getting the amount of swaps and debt balanced correctly in terms of what was happening in the market. And while I became quite experienced, I always relied on someone like PwC as my backstop, because I'm only one person with one view. They've actually got a whole team there looking at the market. And just from both what Jesse and Julia have actually said, right, sometimes you've got to take a view to saying is that, yes, we believe that 5% or whatever it is an appropriate interest rate that we should be paying, acknowledging that, but saying if the interest rate was to fall to say 4%, that we lose 1%, and we're prepared to pay that additional 1% on the basis that we're protecting our ratepayers if the interest rates were to go to 7%. And that's the trade-off. There is no such thing as a free lunch. So you've got to, and that's part of that. That's why you have that Treasury policy to say it's providing the purpose of swaps isn't to say we're there to make money, because that's speculation and we're not allowed to speculate. What we're doing is we're saying is we want to have a degree of certainty over our interest rates, and by taking a view of what is affordable in terms of how much interest, what our affordable interest rate is, that is our position. And people come to me and say, oh, you deal with lots of money, Philip, what do you think I should do? Should I fix my mortgage or should I go floating? And I go, my goodness, where's my crystal ball, right? The issue is, it's not about the crystal ball. It's about saying is, what interest rate can you afford at the moment? And if interest rates go higher, can you afford that higher interest rate?
Yeah.
That's the question you should actually be asking, not am I trying to play the market?
Yeah.
And it's the same with council. What is the affordable amount? And I would actually want to have a look at your Treasury policy, because I actually don't believe that the LTP debt is the appropriate measure.
That actually is sort of a bit vague. We're going to tidy that up.
And my recommendation is it's council's net projected debt over the next 12 months.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Check hold.
Yeah. You're the closest, you're in charge. Okay. So, Councillor Ron.
Are any councils exploring the connection between a residency and loans? Like you lend this council 1 million for 3 years and we'll back your residency application.
No, and the reason is generally councils are not allowed to actually offer loans to retail. Okay, we are basically the only people, because of the can't remember the active off the top of my head, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, right? What is it, Julia? We've got to go to the wholesale market. We can't go to what is known as the primary market, to mum and dad investors, because if we were to go to mum and dad investors or to individuals, then we'd have to issue a prospectus.
Sorry, I'm just clarifying. This question is more related to most governments offer residency.
Yep.
If you bring in like $10 million or
Yeah.
something. So Councillor Ron is asking if Kaipra says, okay, you're welcome to Kaipra, and you put a term deposit or whatever figure, it is not investment as such. So maybe because we are trying to encourage Kaipra, that's all we're trying to do, isn't it?
It's not covered by the LGFA
Immigration New
2002.
Zealand.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. I mean, we can't guarantee residency in New Zealand either, right?
No, that would be with central government rather.
No, the immigration does it.
Yeah.
It's just that where they look to put the money in.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, any further questions? So we've actually got a recommendation on page 27 that we note the Treasury report. Do I have a mover?
Yep.
Thank you. I was going to say Councillor Craig. Now I'll get shot. Here, Craig.
Calling CE Maris, councillor.
Yeah. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor. Oh, thank you, Councillor Aaron. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. It's carried. Our next, thank you very much for that, Julia. Our next item is 4.4, page 33, our policies and bylaw update. We got good.
Virginia should be online.
Coming online. Oh, excellent. Swap the screen so we can see here. Is that? We're just trying to make you a bit bigger.
And you're on mute, Jins.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, she is.
We can't hear you, Virginia. Something at one end or the other's not working.
She's on mute, so it's her end. But I can't unmute her.
Have you unmuted, Virginia? Okay.
No, she's not. Her icon's still showing.
Doesn't show that on our icon here.
You can come back.
Do you want to just log out and come back in again? And we'll just move on to,
Learn sign language really quickly.
sorry?
Or learn sign language really quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we'll come back to you if you'd want to log on and log back. If we just quickly move on to, thank you, Glenys, here, health on 4.5, Glenys, our health, safety and wellbeing update report.
Morning. Through the chair, I take that the report has been read, and if you have any questions.
Oh, I like your style. Thank you. Are there any questions? No questions. I do. You know I will, don't you?
I do. Maybe I could kick it off.
Okay.
Just to let you know that we have hired a new health and safety manager, and that manager will be starting at the end of October. So at the moment, I am currently in another role and also looking after the health and safety role. So I'm also the community services manager. So the workload between the two is quite big. Oh, any questions?
Yeah.
Part of the restructure.
Yes, it was. And so I opted to, I thought that the community services portfolio actually had a really big component of health and safety. So I was really interested in sort of expanding the role.
Thank you. Questions?
Someone else will be presenting to us.
Yes, they will. For a little while. A little while.
Right. Any other questions?
Have you got any?
I've got about 5 here.
Oh, have you? Okay, right. Then.
Okay. So I'll do them in order.
Yep.
Page 36 of the agenda, page 2 of your report.
Yes.
We've got your top risks, right?
Yes.
And the one that surprised me was serious injury or death from a hazard. I thought that should actually be number 1.
Well,
And I just wonder whether they're actually incorporated into all the others as well.
look, I think they are. We're certainly doing a little bit of work with our risks and the titling and the descriptors of the risks. I have sort of essentially owned these, but I didn't construct these. So you're absolutely right. The serious injury and death cover risk, the reason that's a lower grading than the top risk, which is in red, is because I suppose that we have a number of controls that sit so closely to it and we monitor it so closely. And the outcome, because we're talking about something that's generalised, again, the consequence is generalised versus somebody working in a road corridor. Yeah, and I can keep going, but you know exactly where I'm heading.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're heading. I'm being pedantic, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to even be more pedantic in a minute, right?
Oh, heck. Okay.
This is proving I've read the agenda, page 39.
Yes.
We've got the bottom, we've got there, and I do like your crystal ball.
Mm-hmm.
There have been no notifiable events WorkSafe between 1st of July 23 and 30th of September 24. We haven't got to.
Oh, we haven't, have we? No, I'm very sorry. It actually should have been for this reporting period, which is the 30th of June. I'm really sorry, that was my mistake.
I assumed that, but I was thought, do you have a crystal ball?
Oh, if only. And if that was the case, I'd push this out way further.
The other question I have and is on page 40, it's the random audits. And also of the will be conducted on a regular basis. Again, this is for your contractors, because this is the bit that keeps me awake at night. Probably does you as well.
Yes.
And I wonder whether random is actually the right word, because, you know, further on, we talk about the high risk people and whether that is random really an appropriate.
Yes, you're right. We probably should put there that it's unscheduled. So we have a series of scheduled or routine reports or audits that we do, and then there are unscheduled. So I can change that.
I mean, all I'm worried about is WorkSafe come along, right? As you know, they look at all sorts of stuff, right? And they go, but you only do random stuff, right? So you've missed all the high risk ones. So that's the bit.
Yeah, I'll make that clearer in future reports.
Yeah, and the other, and this to follow on from that, the bit that does concern me is that on page 41, we don't appear to have done any audits in our water spaces and the waste minimisation for the April to June 24 quarter.
You're right, and I suspect that one of my colleagues, Donna, will be speaking. Possibly we'll speak to that a little bit later. No, she's not. Okay, it's okay. I just didn't want to step on your toes, Donna, before I went on to say anything. Yes, you're right. I think that is to do with some staffing issues during that period. As you can see there, typically we do between 2 or 1 in a particular quarter, and that quarter is missing, and there are other quarters that are missing. I will follow up and come back to you next time and kind of give you a very clear reasoning as to why we do miss. My understanding is it's because of staffing issues at the time. One of the things that we are going to do with the role going forward is that the person that will replace me will actually have a lot more of their time spent in the field. One of the things that's been quite challenging in this role that I've been in is actually having the ability to be out in the field. When I came into this role, we had a number of systems that weren't as mature as they probably needed to be. So a lot of my time has been spent really working on the culture, both internally and externally, but really trying to develop some of those systems and make sure that they don't become a hindrance to work getting done, but they really support practice. But the new person will actually spend a lot more of their time actually out with our field staff, really doing that kind of assurance piece.
I like the assurance piece.
Yeah, and we desperately do need that. That is something we do need. My
last question, then I've got Councillor. I mean, we note that in your report on page 42, there were 2 incidents of the rally and the fatality. Do you have any further updates from since you wrote the report on that you can share with us?
For sure. So both are under WorkSafe are looking at both of them. So as you possibly will know, that once WorkSafe get involved, it becomes very, very shut down. But what we have done is reviewed our part. So in terms of the rally, we had nothing to do with the event itself, but we certainly do have some duty of care prior to an event taking place. So we reviewed that. And also with the contractor, we also again reviewed, did we do adequate supervision? Do we have adequate mechanisms for feedback? Are we practicing good contractor chain management practices? And I would say that we are.
Okay, yeah, no, I appreciate that. I just wondered, since you wrote the report, has there been any further?
No, there hasn't. And I wouldn't expect there to be. I definitely expect WorkSafe to look very closely at the Ventia worker death in the road corridor. That's one of several that have occurred this year, and it's several that have occurred since we had a change from a very prescriptive road management framework, which used to be called COPTM, to something now which is about managing risk. So it's a very risk management focused practice. And many organisations who work in that road corridor have talked about the difficulty of merging from one system to another. So WorkSafe will look very closely at that particular incident because it is one of it. Well, there's two in Northland, one that happened with contract worker for WDC, and of course one here. There have been others that have occurred throughout New Zealand. And of course, that's why it's our highest risk.
Yep.
The moment you have somebody in the road corridor, actually, I know that we love a good cone in New Zealand, but unfortunately a good cone in New Zealand doesn't keep an oncoming car and a person separated. But the cost of putting in, concrete barriers is often so prohibitive that we're not able to do that. So it's trying to find those balances.
And I note that a number of councils and even NZTA are actually closing roads. So if you drive at the moment between Hamilton and Taupo, the road between Tirau and Pataru is actually closed till the end of October for 2 months. And you've got to take a diversion, just like the Pinderwins, but it's not because of the topography. It's actually the amount of work they want to get done, and it's actually safer and more cost effective to actually close the road.
And I think that was evidence again with the Brandowans.
Yeah.
The amount of traffic that was coming and going to ensure that work could be done quickly.
They also wanted to bring in heavier trucks too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the point of this report, the one that's actually really important for you to always look at, are the number of health and safety audits that do take place in that. And so again, for the time that this was written about, this was about the NTA roading.
Yep.
So that's a really important line to have a look at the total number of audits that have been done by our teams, but also anything that would sit in a needs improvement or dangerous space.
Yeah, I did like that table, and I had needs improvement. So the question I have is, what's the follow up in terms of that needs?
So typically when there's a needs improvement, and so we do escalate it. So there are very clear, I suppose, guidelines about what falls into what camp. So when it's a needs improvement, it is something that can be changed instantly on site. That's not going to lead to imminent risk of harm for others. Where it's elevated to that, typically the site gets closed down until the situation can be remediated.
Thank you. Councillor Ash.
Thank you, Chair. I was just following on from here. I did have a question on page 45, which was audits.
Yes.
But for a layman, if I look at this table, right? Audits, high standard, Chair was pointing out whether one was done in there was done in January, March 24, and 8 high standard. But obviously, what I look at is there's a lot of drama going on, in the press about the water quality, water maintenance, and it's like a lot of people are talking about it's not up to mark. So we had one which says needs improvement. If we go to the needs improvement, which is the crucial, as everybody agrees, on December 23 on 1, right? And then obviously it will be good for us to know what was done, as the chair has pointed out.
Again,
at some stage. What was it? Needs improvement, maybe just a motor, not working or whatever.
And so don't forget, this is health and safety. This is not about.
I'm talking about health and safety.
Yes. So I can certainly make sure that that's captured, and you can see that. It will obviously make I'll probably put it as an appendix because it will suddenly make the volume of this report quite a bit bigger because, of course, what would need improvement at a water treatment plant might be very different to something that's on a dynamic work site.
Yeah.
I can certainly give that information to you.
I wouldn't want to see a whole lot of information, right? But just some key bullet points, right? To say, the question I have, we identified it needs improvement. And yes, it was done, or is it work in progress, right? It's, to me, is, the contractor.
So for our rubrics,
Yeah.
if it's in a needs improvement, then it is something that can be addressed and is not going to lead to imminent risk of harm to people, property, or of anything else. Where it is dangerous, then whatever activity is taking place needs to cease until such time as it can be made safe.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ron?
Can I ask through you, what's the biggest danger to cash flow?
To cash flow?
Yes, to your receipts.
From a worker perspective, from a health and safety perspective?
From the council's point of view, what's the most dangerous adverse effect to your cash flow?
Do you like me to answer?
Yeah.
Through the chair, Councillor Manderson, we don't have a huge cash flow problem at the moment. The moment, the biggest risks are, as Lani mentioned, maybe next quarter rates being unable to be afforded. We also have money in the bank and really a positive cash position. So there's, the risk is of people not being able to afford their rates. Is the biggest risk.
Where would that risk most likely come from?
That people are in hardship and cost of living is going up and incomes are not rising as high.
And that's from the farming community?
That's difficult. A lot of our ratepayers are pensioners or on low incomes. So, but I don't know what the profits of the farmers are that live in our district. Yeah.
Could affect anything.
Anything, yeah.
And the terms of risk, right? There's a variety of risks. And, we're concentrating on health, safety, and wellbeing, right? The biggest risk that I see in terms of health, safety, and wellbeing from the rating, people not being able to pay their rates, is the level of aggression, right? That people actually, when they're under stress, that's when they're likely to more lash out. And I see that as the biggest risk from a health and safety perspective, right? From a overall cash flow perspective, you have mechanisms in which we've actually got to minimise that risk, but certainly I've seen some very angry ratepayers that have actually.
And if I could just put a little bit of context around that, certainly through KDC's social media sites, a way that we engage with our community that started back in 2011. Over that period, there's been 179 comments that have needed to be moderated and effectively taken down. In the last 60 days alone, the total number of comments that have been moderated, 27% of those have occurred in the last 60 days. So certainly we're seeing an increase in the number of people that are letting that frustration go. And we're certainly seeing an elevation in the type of comments that are being made. So our team work very closely to make sure that those sites are well moderated, that if there are comments that are inappropriate, that those are removed. But certainly if they're of a more serious nature, which is where it might start to sit into health and safety, then we make sure that, that NetSafe is aware of them, but also if they are really inflammatory or we think that they could pose a particular risk, then we make sure that the police know about those as well.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Any further health, safety and wellbeing questions?
Just one from me.
Sure.
Has there been any movement on reducing the cone?
Yes.
I think that's the big health and safety thing that costs a fortune in this country. And I know that there was talk from government that we were going to look at that. Has there been any correspondence on that at all?
No, not specifically. And to be honest, I think they're going to really struggle with that. Because they've moved from, as I said before, in terms of traffic management, quite a prescriptive approach, which was about Copton. So it actually laid out to you very clearly what you needed to do and how you needed to do it, to something that's much more risk-based. Of course, most organisations become a little bit more risk averse. So as a result of being risk averse, actually we often find comfort and those witches' hats. So unless there is clear movement from WorkSafe and clear guidance from WorkSafe around how you set up your sites, I suspect for a little while that pendulum will be still sitting probably slightly out to the edge before it comes back to the middle. And given that there's been a number of fatalities in this sector, I think that we're going to stay out on that edge and probably go a bit further before it swings back into the middle. I think you're going to see a lot more, as the chair spoke about, where actually it's probably easier and cheaper and more expedient to close the roads down. But of course, then that has other unintended consequences. And so it's trying to manage that.
Detour, for example.
Yeah. And then you need the personnel to manage that and all of those sorts of things. It's a really tricky one for sure.
I agree. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, next week I've got to do a 30-minute detour because of roadworks to get to my destination because they've closed half the road. So they're actually going to have only one way between midnight and midday coming into New Plymouth. And if you want to go out of New Plymouth, you've got to take a 30-minute detour.
That's a way to trap people.
It is. Well, see, to me is, we're talking about health and safety, yes, but the consequences, then I get really frustrated, right? I take my frustration.
Private behaviour.
Exactly, and I then got to spend another 30 minutes on the road and I'm running late. So what do I do when I get to the 100k in the area? I do 120 to compensate. Oops.
For everything in life.
Hypothetically.
Sorry?
Hypothetically.
Oh, hey, thank you. Hypothetically, thank you. Right. No more questions. So we've got a recommendation there that we note the report. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Erin. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Ron. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Carried. Is Virginia back online?
She is. We're waiting in the lobby.
I saw her. I thought I saw her as well. Otherwise, here she is. Take two.
Take two. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yay. I take my report as being read.
Thank you.
As you can see, we've been doing a lot of work in the area. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I've got one, and it's again there's two. One is we talked about the risk management policy earlier, and I'd be really keen to understand, or maybe we have an offline discussion about the involvement of this committee in development of that policy. I think it's really important that this committee, being having risk in its name, I think it's really important that we have some quite good discussions about that policy. The other one that's on my hit list and on your list, on table 1 on page 2 of your report, on page 34 of the agenda, is the procurement policy.
Yes.
And I see it's not commenced, but it's not due to until middle of next year.
Yes, that's correct.
Is that to me, procurement, right, creates all sorts of risk, and I just wonder whether you have a bit of an outline of the process to develop that over the next period of time.
I sit in the way our restructure is done. I sit in a supportive role. That policy there is owned by our manager of community services, but I am happy under the direction of this committee to work alongside that manager.
Yep. Yeah, I think to me it's about what are the risks around procurement and how are they actually being managed.
Through the chair, I'd love to talk about that in our procurement audit update and PECs.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. All right, that answers my question. If there's no further questions, we've got a recommendation there that we note and accept the policy and bylaws update. Do I have a mover?
Yep.
Mayor Craig, seconded. Councillor, I think Councillor Ron got it by a whisker or a pen or a hand. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
As against, carried. Thank you very much. That was very short and sharp. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next item, 4.6 on page 57, our insurance policy and renewal update. Taken as read.
Take the report as read. Information is in the attachment. We are just showing you a bit of an update on what's happening with our insurance renewals that are in swing at the moment, as well as, interestingly, the insurance that we aren't taking out as well. So happy to talk through that if anyone does have questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Aaron, thank you.
I was very surprised to see that we're not insured for cyber liability. And is that something that we're looking at?
Interestingly, let's let Richard, who's got an IT update, talk to that, because that's a risk that he's really aware of. I obviously didn't focus on that one, but yeah, I think he needs to talk about that because it's whether we have issues, I guess, that requires the insurance.
Oh, you certainly would.
I've debated this with a number of other committees that have got it and haven't got it.
Yeah.
There are post Waikato DHB. My understanding, and stand to be corrected, is if you want to now get cyber insurance, it's very difficult and very expensive. And also the amount of premium versus the benefit may not be worth it.
Right.
So it's the cost of the premium.
Okay.
And what will that premium actually give you? Because all it gives you is cash.
Right.
And is cash the real issue here?
Okay.
Right? And I think we'll unpick that when we have our discussion on IT security, because I think that there are some councils who have looked at, and not one of mine, but have looked at IT security insurance and said, well, for what we're paying in premium, we can actually increase our protection to reduce the risk.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That probably makes.
Yeah. So, but again, it's that discussion of what's the premium and what we actually get and what will actually cover us for.
Right. Okay.
Councillor Ash.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one question on the commercial motor, which is the presentation by Aon. You have taken $1.5 million of 44 KDC vehicles. Now, my question is, are they owned by KDC or are they leased?
They're owned by KDC.
So you have 1.6 million worth of vehicles, 44 owned by KDC, and you have taken a third party liability only, which is there's that's what I'm trying to understand. Normally, I have a car, I pay $1,500 a year on each car so if they get damaged. So I'm just confused why we would need own vehicle 44 and just have third party liability.
I think it's a good question and I will go and find out through Aon.
Thank you.
I don't see any instances of us paying for lots of repairs. So I'm not sure, potentially it's just a bit more further information to come.
Yes, nothing to do with repair.
Yeah.
It's with damage,
Damage, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Aaron.
Yep, I was also interested to know if the recommendation about the business interruption.
So, yes,
I'm not across.
We have
anything that could cover, but.
have discussed that one, interestingly, with the activity managers that look after our assets that generate income. And we are looking into whether it is worthwhile, hoping to report back on the committee on that. But I guess, yeah, that is, given the risk of a cash flow, then potentially it's something we should look into now. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, again, right? For my sins years ago, I used to work for a chartered account. We used to actually do loss of profits and business interruption claims. And so therefore there was actually a formula, right? So for example, if your building burns down or has a flood and you can't operate, you've got to then go and do temporary find somewhere else. That's what the business interruption insurance. There was some interesting cases where the building wasn't damaged, but you couldn't access your premises,
Right.
which then didn't trigger a claim on your material damage and therefore didn't trigger the loss of the business interruption insurance as well. So business interruption insurance is actually quite complicated.
Okay.
Right? And if you've got a whole lot of lease buildings and there's a good supply of lease buildings, do you actually need it?
Yeah.
So and what we've found, other councils that I'm aware of that have had this claim, when there's building loss, traditionally it's only been 12 months. But the cost, sometimes it actually takes 3 years before you can actually reinstate your building. So again, it's the length as well.
Yeah.
So it's again.
I mean, you just can't insure for everything. It's gamble. Insurance is gambling.
And no, I don't want to steal Jean's thunder.
Anyway.
The issue is in terms of the potential loss that a council can have, we only can insure up to 31%. So again, right, how much, where's that fine line between how much insurance do you take, right? And you probably won't get an answer from Aon at the moment either, if you ring them, because they'll be sound asleep. Because they're actually, this is what I like about Aon, they are currently in the UK at the moment, meeting with potential insurers about selling the case for New Zealand.
Oh.
And they've actually taken a couple of credits of sue with them to say this is what we're doing to reduce our insurance liability exposure.
Cool.
So you'll give us a nice comprehensive report in the November meeting after. And also, if we don't like some of the policies, there is potential to amend it and increase or decrease the premium accordingly.
Through the chair, Aon are very happy to come to any ARF meeting. So if you would like me to, or if the committee would like.
Yeah, I think the committee, yeah. I think it's worthwhile. Let's look at what the issues are rather than just bring them in for a general chit chat.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think maybe can I be so bold, suggest that we don't invite them to the November one. You see the premium list and invite them to the one in next year, early next year, and then we can actually go through that. What are we getting for our money, and are there better alternatives? So that would be a worthwhile.
The benefits and the disadvantages of each.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
You happy with that?
Very.
Okay. Believe it or not, I didn't have any questions on this one.
Well, I thought they did a good job.
Sorry?
I thought they had it nicely.
Seen it before, unfortunately for them. Right. All right. So with no further questions, do I have a mover for the recommendation that we note the insurance and policy? Yep. Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Ash. All right, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Our regulatory update, page 40, so page 57, 4.7. She's again. Thanks. Taking responsibility a lot this time. All right.
So this report is just on our regulatory compliance in the building and resource consents. This is a report for the final numbers for the 2024 year ended June. 100% compliance for resource consents and very close to 100 for building consents, which sometimes come a little bit down when there's a 1 or 2 day delay. Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah, when we had received a customer survey the other day, a quarterly survey, that didn't come in as a very popular item. I'm wondering, I think at the time we mentioned, I think I got a response too, was how we can specifically find from applicants whether they were satisfied or not.
I can look into.
You're showing good numbers here, right? So you'd expect. you'd get a high level of satisfaction.
I am not sure, but we do have our annual, like, resident surveys, and I'm not sure that we have any negative instances in those consent spaces. I mean, our building consents team's just been risk rated again by IANZ and MB, and they have got the best ever risk, the lowest risk they've ever been, according to IANZ, because of the quality that we have there. So I
Yeah,
can get
that's really
data if you like.
satisfying to know, because one of the specific things the new council wanted was for that area to be much more, what's the word? Better received by the customer.
Mr. Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, the Mayor, for your commentary there. Yes, in the annual resident survey, which is a very small percentage of users who have used the service, apparently, the results weren't the best. However, we did mention at the council meeting that both, the building consents team do a survey of each user, which is a lot more in-depth and specific questioning. And we sent that out to elected members post the last briefing on that. And the results are very pleasing and show a different picture with more robust and in-depth data. Also, what's happening in the resource consent space is the team are designing that questionnaire and survey to go to their users also. So we'll get some more rich data from the resource consents users too. So in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Peter, thank you.
Yeah, I just had some queries around why there isn't an inclusion of the results from the aluminium levels in the Wairoa River versus the work that Kaipara District Council carried out at the wastewater treatment plant to verify whether there was any contamination coming from the treatment plant. I would have liked to see some commentary and some narrative in there, so because it's a very concerning matter with the community.
Maybe we can add that to a future report, might be the appropriate way to do it.
Yes, or particular requests like that we could answer by email,
Yeah, that there needs to be something in writing because it's all very unofficial at the moment to formalise it.
But I think the Chief Executive might want to comment again on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, absolutely. It is a thing for our community and understanding the results. We have done the testing we are doing, and it has shown that the levels of aluminium are low from our plants within acceptable standards. And I have distributed that to elected members. But you're right, Councillor Paniora, we need to put this on the public record, and we will do that, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions on this report? Yep.
Thank you, Chair. I have a quick question, actually. So NRC is the one which monitors, gives us resource consent for various wastewater disposal, the usage of water from the rivers and whatnot. And looking at 6 o'clock news today, I mean, the NRC fails on lots of grounds. Is there any accountability from KDC to asking NRC to mind your own, business first? Because the same thing is happening, but what is happening in Wairoa, the same thing is happening in Northern Wairoa. So the water is not about wastewater treatment, water going into the river. There are issues with not clearance of, silt and whatnot. So I'm just, it's a core question or a quick question. Do we have any powers to ask NRC whether they are doing a good job? Jason Maris is silent now, I think.
Yes, I'm sure the Chief Executive is listening in.
Okay.
There he is.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Nair, could you please...
yeah, I can repeat the question. So what I'm trying to say, we have seen in this morning news as well, Napier and, Wairoa River and all those floods, which we also got floods. and they found out, and they actually looking to penalize the regional council for the faults of there in not opening a sandbar and the flooding reason. All I'm trying to say, NRC gives a host of obligations to us in terms of wastewater treatment or drawing water from the Kayo River and whatnot. Do they have any obligation, or do they just have powers? Or can we exercise some power as a council to ask them why they are not doing their part? That's my question.
Okay, I'll see if I can unpick that. The NRC, like KDC, is a regulatory body, and they, have the powers to enforce their consenting, all of that sort of stuff. So they have the power to do what they will do like KDC does as a regulatory body. We absolutely do work quite closely with the NRC, though. We have a good relationship with their staff, and we're very happy to work with them on certain things, and we do so quite a bit. We do have the ability to request information and all that sort of stuff from the NRC and can do that. I'm trying to understand the specificities around it. Sorry, Councillor Nair.
Well, all I'm trying to say, requesting information is not enough. Can we ask some action from NRC to mind their business, in terms of looking after what they are supposed to do? That's my question. We haven't done that. So
we can communicate with the NRC.
They are masters and we are servants. That's what I'm asking.
That is the way of the regulatory nature, and if you're a regulator, yes.
Yeah. It'll be this way, though. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'll talk in PX about Wairau, okay? I chair the Ordinance Committee. Okay. I do work for Hawke's Bay Regional as well, okay? Right. Just one question. On page, and if you don't, I wouldn't expect Jessie to give you to answer, on page 59, your code of compliance certificates processed, we seem to have them going number of days to take, seems to fluctuate, and that, I'm not expecting you to, but just it's a
general through the chair. The reason is that some consent applications are very much bigger than others.
Yeah, Coast Coke. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I know. It just looks weird. But can I just give the committee some assurance? The fact that you're actually getting 100% or close to 100% in your building consents and resource consents is a pretty good outcome. Right? Go to some of the other councils that I'm not on, right? But I live really close to. They'd be lucky to hit 60%. Right? And the frustration with the building and development community is rather high. It take a year to get a building consent.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And they are using the ability to ask further questions, but it's really, really not a good story.
They're using Section 92 simply because they haven't done the work.
Couldn't confirm or deny. Okay, I know nothing, right? But they use those provisions, particularly in the building, to everyone's frustration, right?
I just had a clarification through the chair. If you look at the building consents as well as resource consents for the last 3 years, they are consistently falling. Maybe that has to do with our good record or whatever. I'm just assuming. Maybe we're ticking all the boxes and then we are not giving it. So that's why we're getting 100%.
Oh, yeah, but no, you want to explain? When you look at the graph for building consents, yes. When you look at the number of building consents, right, that the graph's actually, yes, the number of building consents are falling, but even when they were at the high, we were at 96 and 100%. So we were right up there in terms of our processing time for those years when we actually had quite high demand for our building consents as well. Is that what you were going?
And I was just going to comment that sometimes those applications, the number of consents might not relate to the number of dollars that we get in on them.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think the trend is actually really good. The number of, that little wiggly line in red, the average working days, I think is actually the telling story. It's how long it's actually taking to process the building consents. That to me is the telling story.
Thank you.
Thank you. So you've got a recommendation there on page 57 that we notes the regulatory compliance update for September 24. Do I have a mover?
Yep.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ash. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. We'll do this next item and then we'll break before we move into public excluded. So our past audit on recommendations on page 65, item 4.8. Jesse, again, take it as read.
Yeah, take it as read. We're just reporting on what we've sort of done on those and where we're at. So if you have any questions on any particular ones, let me know.
Any questions? No questions? All right. Can I have a mover for the recommendation on page 65? Councillor Erin. Maybe I'll take a turn at seconding. Right, all those in favour, I'll second. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. We'll adjourn for 10 minutes, then we'll move into public excluded.
About 11:15.
11:15. Yep, 11:15. Thank you. Okay, let's reconvene this meeting. And can I have a mover that we move into public excluded? Councillor Erin, Councillor Ash, all those in favour, please say aye. Those against carried. Wait 30 seconds while we stop the recording, public recording that is. Kelly will let me know when it's ready.